It's the 31st, very last day of May 2022. I'm Dana Durnford. I hope you're doing okay on this mad planet. This insane planet. Always takes me a couple of seconds to get up to speed. And we'll turn the music down and just jump right into it. It's a late show tonight. I apologize. That's the way it goes, unfortunately. We've done a radio show, so another audience hopefully will get the message. And we have a poll tonight. Poll. Should Helen Caldicott stop pretending she's anti-nuclear? That's an incredible statement. Anybody that knows Helen Caldicott? She wrote 14 top-selling books, Dana. She's a Dr. Dana. Why would you call her a lawyer for? Well, just give me a second. Don't be so pushy. Hang on. We're almost there. One more. One more. There we go, Helen. Here we go. Good stuff. Let's do it. Okay. And so Helen Caldicott has done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lectures and presentations and scarier radio interviews. And she claims, bring you to Reactor 4. Reactor 4. So she's going to claim the fuel pool is still in the building. Anytime you're ready, Helen.
Building 4 is also similarly fragile, and it's got a huge cooling pool on top with all its fuel rods, but they have been removing them, and it's been a very delicate procedure, and they've removed almost all. So if that collapsed now, I think it would probably be okay.
So Reactor 4, as you can see in the background over there, is actually, the fuel pool was at the very top of the building. It's actually gone, and she knows it. So when she was asked about Reactor 4, does Reactor 4 look like this, which is obviously what it looks like, or does it look like that? Helen chose that. So hear me out.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
So it doesn't work that way. Sorry, Helen. But she knows the difference. She wrote 14 books on nuclear. Arnie Gunnarsson is one of her chummies. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing good. And so we put a poll up. Should Helen Caldicott stop pretending she's anti-nuclear? And obviously she's lying about Reactor 3 and Reactor 4.
And especially Building 3 is very fragile. It's still got a huge cooling pool on its roof, protected by nothing. The molten core has melted its way down onto the concrete of the containment vessel, but maybe into the earth. And if that collapsed, there would be a nuclear inferno.
Okay, so just to clarify, so this is Reactor 3 she was talking about. The fuel pools are at the very top of the building. That's the original footage, so it doesn't exist. And this is Reactor 4. That's actually what it looked like. And so the fuel pools, which is decades of reactor cores, are at the top of the buildings. They're gone. And she knew better. And so how do I let that slide, right? How does that work? Well, you can't, unfortunately. Arnie Gunnarsson is her crony.
Now, the division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
And so, two Danas. So if he doesn't know, the fuel pools are not there, and Helen doesn't know, and they're the ones that are being pumped out to the population, we's in a lot of trouble. So a lot of them, I want to remind you because I don't do it enough, what is a becquerel? A becquerel is an atomic disintegration per second. And so iodine-129 can do that for 150 million years, in increments of 15 million years. And so a curry is 37 billion pulses at the speed of light every second. So imagine this stuff is in your body pulsing at the speed of light, destroying your chromosomes, your DNA, going through your organs. And your body has to attack all of that with white blood cells, right? And 37 billion atomic disintegrations a second. Okay. So when people talk about potassium, which is bananas or potatoes or natural, harmless, stupid, everyday emitter that doesn't hurt, it's natural. It's part of the solar system. It's the very fabric of life. And equates it with cesium or strontium. Here's the difference. Potassium 40 per gram is 0.000071, infinitesimally irrelevant, whereas cesium per gram is 88 curries, and a curry is 37 billion. So let me do the maths per gram of what this, and that is can pulse energy every second long past the human experience. Okay, so I'll bring you up. So you got 37 billion. We're only talking, each isotope has a different scale. So 37 billion. And let's use strontium, 140 of these curries per gram. So you got 37 billion times 130. This is what a single gram can release into the environment. And 4 trillion, 8 billion disintegrations. Is it? No, millions, billions. Millions, billions, trillions. Yeah, 4.8 trillion atomic decays per gram per second at the speed of light. So imagine losing tens of millions of pounds, multiply, take tens of millions of pounds, get it down to grams, and then when you get it down to grams, multiply it by that to get the disintegration. But the problem is, the fuel pools are emitting much more than this every day. The fuel is still splitting the atom when you put it in a pool. That gets sucked up by the water, goes up to skinny stacks, and a lot of it ends up in the farms close by, because they're usually surrounded by farms, or covers the planet, in plumes like we see from Fukushima, pulsing energy every second. That's global warming in overdrive, by the way. And so that's why eating food from a nuclear wasteland is a bad idea. Growing it right by the bags is a terrible idea. But it wasn't just Fukushima Prefecture. 55 countries banned food from 14 prefectures because of those particular attributes. So it's very dangerous in very small amounts for very long periods of time. Your body attacks it for the rest of your life, and as you eat more of it or breathe or drink and consume more of it, it sequesters your muscles, your organs, your bones. Your body has to attack everything that enters your body with equally enthusiasm, so to speak. And then, because it bioaccumulates up the food chain, or just from consumption of water, for goodness sakes, or breathing the air. And so all fuel pools are hemorrhaging. They're just hemorrhaging. And it's not trillions, it's way past those numbers, googles of numbers. Each day is released into the environment, pulsing energy. So it's like an invisible snow, it's like a snowstorm. Consider a snowstorm worldwide, and snow never melts. We'll flip that and call it radiation, where the radiation never disappears and it's nonstop coming out all day, every day. Like a snowstorm all day, every day for 1,000,000 years. Well, this is what radiation, the only way to picture radiation is the same amount of snowflakes as it is radiation. If it was a symmetrical storm right around the world. Okay. So should Helen Caldicott stop pretending she is anti-nuclear? And the right answer is yes, because she is pretending, see? So the European Union is going to, July I think, is going to vote on taxonomy, what they call a taxonomy, where they label an energy supply as green, which means you can invest money in and make money by doing that. You tax breaks, there's incentives, there's dividends and everything else by investing in whatever is labeled. And so the first thing they've done was labeled nuclear as green, and which is obviously not true. Nuclear is the most carbon-intensive thing in human history. Calling on the lawmakers to block the inclusion of gas in nuclear as a green investment. Calling on lawmakers to block the inclusion of gas in nuclear as a green investment. Well, you definitely want to block nuclear, 100%. Nuclear is climate change. Nuclear is global warming. 76 years of the constant emissions will eventually exterminate the planet. But Fukushima was an overdrive catalyst. This proposal is not science-based but political. It was all cooked up in 2015 at the so-called Paris Accord in London. France is just a terrible, terrible entity. How's everybody doing? Hi, everyone. Again, I'm sorry for the late show tonight. Immensely exciting novel treatment for developing tumors. We kind of touched on that last night. Do you want to use nuclear waste from the National Nuclear Laboratories? Hang on, I'll find it for you. Personalized medicine in the United Kingdom. Anytime you hear the word personalized medicine, run as fast as you can. Scientists are looking to the possibility nuclear waste could be used to treat cancer rather than cause it. There's some serious double talk there. Cancer is one of the biggest killers down in the United Kingdom. UK is in a prime position to benefit from the development in the uses of nuclear waste, given the large supply of it in the country. There's some, like, the cure to cancer is DCA, for sure. And the Zelensky regiment, if you look up the Zelensky documentaries on cancer, he has a 100% success rate. And he was ostracized from the medical community for quite a long time. But he is obviously the real deal. But imagine saying the UK is in a prime position to benefit from using nuclear waste and the victims dying from radiation poisoning. Because United Kingdom, all their nuclear sites and reprocessing fuel sites are surrounded by farms. So of course cancer skyrocketed over there. But also heart problems and liver problems and lung problems and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline and Alzheimer's and dementia and autism. So this story is a good story. We don't get many of them, of course. Giant deep ocean turbine trial. And what it is, it's shaped kind of like a plane, and it's going to be able to produce around 2 megawatts of energy. What is it? Let me see here. Maybe I get that backwards. So Japan has successfully tested a system could harvest energy from tidal zone. And then they had to put in this connotation regardless of wind or the sun. Yeah, but if you took wind, or what they're referring to is wind and solar, and you backed it up with geothermal and tidal, and then for storage, for peak power, you had emergency storage of pumped hydro or compressed air storage. That's the end of all fighting over how to make it work. That's the solution, obviously. They're suppressing it, obviously. This is a 330-ton prototype designed to be anchored to the ocean floor from 50 meters, 160 feet roughly. Wind power is better in Europe because it's a higher latitude. Which reminds me, when you hear the word higher, windmills should be put up on mountains where the wind blows all the time, right? Those valleys and mountains, they funnel the wind when there's no wind, causes a temperature inversion from the warm air, cold air. Japan is apparently the world's third largest generator of solar power, and they last year we covered a story where Japan was turning off renewable energy equal to 3 nuclear power plants each day, because nuclear can only run at full speed, so you can't turn it on and turn it off, so it doesn't want to share the grid ever. And the whole grid is designed not to work together. They scuttle it on purpose. A prototype could generate the expected 100 kilowatts of stable power because tidal is predicted for thousands of years. Now, tide doesn't run, it runs in cycles, and then there's a little lull, right, of 30 minutes or something, depending where you're to, and then tide changes and runs the other way. But if you pair it up with geothermal and compressed air storage, where you dig big mine shafts and compress air down to it, and you want to scale it up to a full 2 megawatts, which won't be a problem. And there she be. And we're missing the headline to that story. So there's 2 companies. I'm sorry, it's Futaba and Namie. Now, Futaba is joined on to the nuclear meltdowns. It's an abandoned town. So what they're basically, Toyota's involved in it. They're going to try to set up a hydrogen car network, and they're going to build it right in a nuclear wasteland. And even Namie, of course, was evacuated for 7 years. They should have never, and it's only a very few people went back to it. And so what they're doing is they're trying to trick people into going into a nuclear wasteland and living a normal life. So there are gullible people out there, say, that will believe the the propaganda that is okay to be there. And so they got a few victims tricked and deceived and manipulated into going back into the danger zone. And then put the RE against working towards the realization of a carbon-neutral society. And so in 2015, a bunch of countries got together, not really, but a bunch of people from different countries got together that were in positions of authority, so to speak, and decided to make a decision that the world needed nuclear. And the only way to have it was by deception. And so now you're hearing the words carbon-free and carbon-neutral, etc., etc. Okay, so this story from Beyond Nuclear International is why we got a poll today about Helen Caldicott, 'cause she started up Beyond Nuclear. Should Helen Caldicott stop pretending she is an anti-nuclear? Okay, so they showed you this picture from the Chernobyl Museum. And this picture is all these communities are abandoned. It's not all of them, but it's some of them. The main danger between a reactor and a war zone and at its irradiated fuel pool, loss of power can result in both the fuel pool or the reactor, what they call draining down. They boil off the water, and there's no water to fill it up. And then the fuel rods are kept underwater, because if they're exposed to air, they'll literally detonate. They'll catch fire. They'll burn at extreme temperatures. That'll ignite the uranium and plutonium. And then you have 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature liquefied reactor core. So this would expose the highly radioactive fuel rods, resulting in meltdowns and explosions, as occurred at Fukushima in Japan, where large amounts of radioactivity were released into the environment. So they go on and they show you Chernobyl fallout. Instead of showing you Fukushima fallout, so the appropriate thing there would have been to show one of these government maps from the countries worldwide of Fukushima radioactive fallout. This is a 16-day map scale based on venting, not based on the actual inventories, the fuel that was lost and atomized in aerosol. And remember, I showed you at the beginning of the show what a gram produces. These reactors at Fukushima were each 720 tons. So get your grams from your tons, multiply it by 4.8 trillion. Was it 4.8 trillion? Did I close that window down? That'll teach me. So this is one of the plume models of Fukushima. So they talk about Fukushima released radiation, occurred at Fukushima, where large amounts of radiation were released into the environment, instead of worldwide. Why didn't they say worldwide? So then they show you Chernobyl. Explosion has happened at both Chernobyl and Fukushima. Ejected radioactive nuclides high into the atmosphere so that they travel long distances. Well, Fukushima is different because they also, for about 6 weeks, sprayed salt water in the reactors because they never had any bore-rated fresh water. Specialized water, I should call it, not just any water. And then the sulfur, because it's landing on getting close to 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, is atomized, the salt water. And then the sulfur creates these spherical balls that ingest uranium, plutonium, and everything else, americium, neptunium, californium, whatever. Isotopes into it, they're very mobile, they don't need the jet stream, they don't need to be injected high into the environment, and they were made at a rate that is stunning amount was made over a 5-6 week period of just with salt water. The map below, the European Environmental Agency showed that the dispersal and disposition of cesium 137. From the Chernobyl catastrophe in Ukraine. Now, cesium, as far as I can tell, is used as a distraction. It's a nasty one. It's a terrible isotope, don't get me wrong. But the biggest byproduct of a nuclear meltdown is curium isotopes. And you need lead shielding 20 times thicker for curium isotopes than you do for plutonium, for goodness sakes. And plutonium is much more lethal than cesium. And cesium is lethal. Covering 40% of the land area of Europe, as it follows weather patterns over the 10-day period of the accident. So to show you that map. So the yellow is still radioactive fallout, but they're only talking about 40% is effective for some reason. Contrary to what many people think, the radioactive fallout from Chernobyl reached the United Kingdom 2,500 kilometers away. I thought it was 3,000 miles away. In 1986, is also shown in the above map. In Japan, radiation disposition from Fukushima in 2011 was felt in selective areas of Japan. Really? You sure it wasn't all of Japan? How can it only be selectively in parts of Japan when it covered the entire planet? With incredible numbers. In Canada, one study of just the iodine-129 was 220 million atoms of just that in each liter of rainwater, for goodness sakes. Japan was completely polluted. So to suggest that it fell in selective areas with radioactive particles is traveling as far as 400 kilometers, that's like Hiroshima and Nagasaki was tens of thousands of just cesium gamma emitters. It covered all of Japan. We've covered that many times over the last decade, right? You know, like Tokyo was brutal, but Tokyo's only 220 kilometers away. What they were saying, like, if Reactor 4 went, I showed you earlier, was completely destroyed, obviously, they should evacuate Tokyo, which is 36 million people. And they pretended that the fuel didn't reach Tokyo. It's estimated about 7% of Japan was seriously contaminated. Like, seriously, we've covered the numbers right across the country on a number of occasions. The entire country is incredible. You know, there was 865,000 extra cancers across the whole country in the first year compared to any other year, a spike of almost 1 million cancers. And cancer is usually latent. It's just one of the 1,800 illnesses. And this is beyond nuclear, though. In the first few days and weeks after the disaster, the first releases are generally short-lived radioactive gases and vapors, including tritium. The biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods is curium isotopes, not iodines, not cesium, not tritium. And tritium's there. There's no such thing as tritium, by the way. It's tritium-3H. And so why not? Because it's important, right? Because tritium is natural. Tritium-3H is man-made anthropogenic radioactive materials. So beyond nuclear. I had to go back and check, and I was like, oh crap, this is beyond nuclear. And get ready for the nonsense. Cindy Folker, beyond nuclear, and Dr. Ian Fairlie, who we've caught him on a number of occasions suggesting Chernobyl was worse than Fukushima, which is a ludicrous assertion. Now, the way it works for a lot of these apologists is they gotta bring some stuff and then start to feed you the disinformation. And so he's the closest I've seen really to being honest, but he's a very knowledgeable person, so there's no reason he can make these constant Freudian slips, so to speak, because they're not. The first few days and weeks after the disaster, first releases were generally short-lived radioactive gases. Actually, that's not true. Hang on, I'll show you why that's not true. Which is better than me trying to articulate. There's a simple way to show everybody why that statement, and he knows better, is not as being deceptive and deceitful. Now might be applicable, say, the 3 Mile Island, which irradiated over 2 million people right away. Okay. Here we go. So this is reactor 3 detonating. The buildings you see there, the square ones, are 190 feet high. Well, there goes the fuel and the fuel rods and the pools and the reactor core. So this is not like a typical meltdown. This was like that explosion in one sense is like an improvised explosive device, right? And so it's not the same as a meltdown, for starters, what I'm trying to say. Xenon and krypton, which we got huge plume models of from, this one is from the Norwegian Institute of Air Research, of the Xenon-133. There's similar ones for krypton. TEPCO got the models for plutonium-239 dispersals. You know, but like in one sense he's right, because strontium-90 doesn't peak. It doesn't mean it's not there, but it actually doesn't peak for the first 1,000 days, and then it stays peaked for tens of thousands of days. Like, so a China syndrome is different than a detonation, right? So the detonation released huge amounts into the environment. These types of discrepancies are, because this stuff is lethal to everything replicating cells, are important. Although short-lived radionuclides, for example, iodine-131, with a half-life of 8.3 days, decays quickly, and I always hate the iodine-131. It's important. There was 10 times more iodine-132 and 30 times more iodine-133 and 31 times more iodine-129 for every iodine-131 created. And iodine-132 and 133 are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of birds and animals and insects and mammals and humans. So it's important. It's got to be part of the equation. People need to understand that it's not as simple as 1 + 1, right? When you got 1, you can extrapolate 1,000 others isotopes from that. And that's what cesium and iodine is actually used for, because you can find the ratio of it easy with the equipment that we managed to have, but you can't extrapolate most of the isotopes with the equipment we have. So my Geiger counter is not going to pick at 325 counts per minute. It's still not going to be plutonium emitters, right? It's only going to pick up gamma emitters. or who lack, let me go back. Long-lived nuclides in the environment like cesium with a half-life of 30 years pose a danger. So does the plutonium and uranium and americium and neptunium and strontium and all the other stuff. Everything that's man-made. So the iodine gathers up in the thyroid gland, and most of it's converted into radioactive hormones, because that's what the thyroid gland does. And that then gets contributed to the pituitary gland, which is in your brain, right? So you have all these radioactive hormones, and the kids do, and the women do. And, of course, they're the most vulnerable by a very large margin, comparable doses. So these occur both internally during the first phases of catastrophe when they are inhaled or ingested, and also decades later when soil and leaf litter are disturbed by storms or forest fires. So they're reliberated into the environment and can continually expose generations of animals and people, especially those unable to evacuate from contaminated areas or who lack access to clean food. So America lifted all restrictions on the food from the nuclear wastelands on September 21st last year. United Nations, or the EU, done it on September the 20th. Canada done it after 93 days, while 55 countries banned it for over a decade, from 14 prefectures. Canada lifted all restrictions at the end of the first 93 days, when the meltdowns were still going full rage. Canada lifted all restrictions. So no other country would take Canadian food or Japanese food. So where's Japanese going to send it? Oh, well, Canada said they'll take it. Don't need to check it or anything. Just ship it over. We'll pay you full price. We don't care about Canadians. It's outrageous what they've done. It's like really, they don't look at us as humans at all. They don't see anybody as a human. Only themselves, of course. We all lack access to clean food now because of the nuclear industry, the decades and decades and decades. And shelter, they talk about if an action is supposed to staying indoors, closing all doors and windows tightly, blocking any area where air might enter it. Which you can't, right? Potassium iodine tablets are provided to be effective or proven to be effective in protecting against the harmful effects of fast-traveling iodine. But any gamma emitter is going to gather up in your thyroid, like cesium, for instance. When your iodine 129 is 90% beta decay, 10% gamma. As radioactive gases, but because iodine acts similar to potassium, regardless of what emitter, if it sequesters in your muscles and your organs, it can end up in your thyroid. But your thyroid likes certain stuff to turn it into radioactive hormones, and that's the worst case scenario, and this is why we see the mass die-offs. The protection is particularly important for pregnant women and children. You can't protect them. You got to evacuate. You're not just going to get iodine coming through. You're going to have all the other isotopes too. Yeah, you got to protect the women and the children of all species on this planet immediately and permanently and particularly. So he acknowledges that it doesn't protect against the other isotopes. You got to stress that. Because most people won't even read that far into a paragraph and they give up and walk away. And tritium. Like, tritium's nasty, don't get me wrong. I've done entire 1 and 2 hour shows just on tritium years ago, and I still have all that material. Might as well do another one in the near future if I can ever get it done. Contamination released by nuclear reactors doesn't stay in one place. There are forest fires, heavy rain, snow melt, human activities, war. Radioactivities in plants and soils can be resuspended later on, becoming available for yet more inhalations, ingestions, ensuring ongoing exposures. They show you an animal, but it's got, like 30 years after Chernobyl, the bores in Sweden were still too radioactive. Like 20,000 becquerels a kilogram of just gamma. They only check for gamma typically because they don't want you to think about alphas and neutrons and betas. Much of the impact on the population in radioactivity contaminated areas could be avoided if people were assisted in moving away in order to stop breathing contaminated air and eating the contaminated food. Well, they shouldn't grow it there. It should be illegal, obviously. Well, nuclear's not supposed to exist. If you live within the proximity of a nuclear power plant, then you're in danger. Just, if you can hear the 100 sirens that they got within 10 miles of a typical power plant, you're not supposed to be there. That's the danger zone, see? The radioactive plumes from 3 Mile Island, nuclear catastrophe in Pennsylvania in 1979, resulted in local people complaining of skin rashes, metallic tastes in their mouth, hair loss, which means you got a brutal inhalation, constant inhalation doses. Now, there were studies came out trying to downplay it. Says, 2 million people got irradiated, but it was like watching color television for an extra year. Yuck, yuck. And whoever wrote that story or that study should be arrested for doing that. That is unequivocally criminal. It's like someone taking a rattlesnake and going to a kid, give me your arm, this is going to turn you into Spider-Man. And then the kid dies, and oh, damn, I thought he was going to turn into Spider-Man. It's not an excuse, see? And deaths of their pets, as if animals are the only, So there was the radioactive plume models that are out there of Pennsylvania. It was guaranteed that a lot of people would have got heart attacks. There's 1,800 illnesses and diseases, not just cancer. And again, he talks about iodines, kryptons, venom, xenon, and tritium vapors. This is madness. The reactors run on uranium plutonium. And the biggest byproduct of a nuclear meltdown is curium, and plutonium, and neptunium, and strontium, and americium, etc., etc. It was just a fraction of the 1,000 fission products you're worried about. So now he talks about radiation levels were so high they overwhelmed the radiation monitors, which then failed to measure levels or erroneously registered them as zero. So if your Geiger counter gets an exceptional, if you get close to a huge source, you'll fry the Geiger counter. At 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima, children exposed to radioactive iodine initial releases experienced thyroid problems. Again, talking about thyroid cancers, when there's congenital malformations, there's, in Fukushima, 14,200 out of every 100 live births need open heart surgery, for goodness sakes. And that there's orphanages throughout that area with disfigured children that are abandoned. And that, to talk about iodine, talk about cancers, you get so much radiation in your thyroid gland, cancer takes forever to show up. But that's all turned into radioactive hormones, which means you got huge problems with your organs and your functions of your body immediately. You're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses. Because many health impacts appear years or decades after the radiological catastrophe, allows the government, the media, as nuclear power proponents to claim minimal health impacts, and thereby to misrepresent the true state of the fear, which they've done, right? Because this is one of the better stories you'll find, but there's so much missing information, so much misdirecting, so much omissions. These are not stupid people that wrote this, by the way. They know everything I'm telling you and then some. So, they want to appear to be critical of the industry, and they won't use the tools at their fingertips. Like if they really wanted, I got a simple way of making this point. If they really wanted right, to deal a fatal blow to the nuclear industry, because they have a big audience, because they're perpetual lawyers. But I'll show you. I already showed you Helen Caldicott, which started up that organization, that betrayal. Wait for it. Almost there. Or am I? Oh, I know what I wanted. This one to show you. Just bear with me. Because that's the beauty of the truth. The truth is really straightforward, right? So if they inserted this picture into that story and said, look, there's the real reactor 4 and here's the fake one, what do you think would happen in the next 12 hours? If Beyond Nuclear came out and said, oh, by the way, they faked the reactor 4 fuel pool. It doesn't actually exist and it's covering the planet. So all Beyond Nuclear has to do actually is just tweet out that picture right there. And I'll get rid of the Geiger counter, get a nice screen capture. And that's just a fraction of the people. But Kevin Kemp at Beyond Nuclear says the fuel pools are not gone. Right? And so, if you're anti-nuclear, it's impossible for you to have seen this and not know the difference. It's impossible. Helen Caldicott. She played a major role in reinvigorating as president the Physicians for Social Responsibility. 23,000 doctors that are not actually educated at all. And she currently divides her time between Australia and US, where she lectures widely and radio interviews. And I showed you some of that earlier, where she lied about Reactor 3 and Reactor 4. But she's done that hundreds of times. In 2001, she founded the US-based Nuclear Policy Research Institute, which became Beyond Nuclear. Beyond our nuclear team. And they even got the founding president's picture on the front of their site. Okay, so here's Reactor 3. Well, what's left of it. And there's no fuel pools at the top of the building whatsoever. This is the remains of Reactor 4. There is no fuel pools left. It's completely gone, right? So then when she's asked, or she talks about Reactor 4, she's done many times.
Building 4 is also similarly fragile, and it's got a huge cooling pool on top with all its fuel rods, but they have been removing them. And it's been a very delicate procedure, and they've removed almost all. So if that collapsed now, I think it would probably be okay.
Okay, now she's done the same thing for Reactor 3.
And especially Building 3 is very fragile. It's still got a huge cooling pool on its roof, protected by nothing. The molten core has melted its way down onto the concrete of the containment vessel, but maybe into the earth. And if that collapsed, there would be a nuclear inferno.
Okay, so she said Reactor 4, and she was asked, did Reactor 4 really look like that? And she said, yes, it does look like that. She said, the Japanese are very tidy people, and they cleaned it all up, and now it looks like that. But it doesn't work that way, because the fuel pools don't come back, they're gone. And she wrote 14 anti-nuclear books, and her partner in crime is Arnie Gunnarsson. She always refers people to Arnie Gunnarsson.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
But it doesn't exist. Does anybody bother telling Helen it don't exist? Does anybody? Let me see here. Stephen Gadd. Dana, what do you know about Seabrook Nuclear Plant? I've covered it a few times. I don't know that much about it off the top of my head, unfortunately. Kevin Blanche probably knows lots about it. He's there in the comments section somewhere. Seabrook, I'll look it up later. I'm not liking to look at that picture. Seabrook Nuclear Plant. What you need is a good aerial shot first to see if there's farms around it. That's an aerial shot. Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant, New Hampshire. Oh, that's over New Hampshire. Wow. Let me see what that picture looks like. Yeah, I can't tell. I can't tell, unfortunately. Hi, everybody. If I accidentally touch this thing and it stops, it'll stop on me, right? I can't touch the mouse. So should Helen Caldicott stop pretending she is anti-nuclear? And then the right response to that is, yeah, she should stop. And then the claim that the building is perfect because the Japanese are tidy people. So they made a building out of thin air, and to Helen, that's okay. Helen, you got to remind you that Mrs. Caldicott is not naive, and she's not gullible. She's not stupid. Kevin Blanche says, her ex-husband says she's a second-hand movie star, wannabe, which sounds about right to me, certainly. Where were we left off here? Helen Caldicott. And Kevin Camp. Let me see if I can find a clip of Kevin Camp very quick for you. Because that's word herring. I could find it. I got like 10 terabytes hooked up to it. I'll put that on the big screen. Or not. Yeah, that's him. So he's going to talk about Reactor 4 fuel pool. He's going to claim it's still there. And now he's from Beyond Nuclear. See that? Beyond Nuclear?
High-level radioactive waste storage pools. And incredibly, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the nuclear industry, has given short shrift to the...
Now he's talking about an American fuel pool, and he's going to equate it to Fukushima, just to give you some context.
Safety risks of pools. So these are catastrophes waiting to happen. There's the slower motion boil down scenario on the pools, but there's the fast motion drain down scenario. And one instance of that we can point to in the United States several times now over the decades is the near drop of heavy loads. And one of my favorites, because I'm from there, Southwest Michigan, is Palisades Atomic Reactor, October 2005, nearly dropped a load weighing 107 tons. It dangled over the pool for 2 days. They nearly overrode the emergency brake on the crane, which would have been catastrophic. You could drain these pools pretty much instantly. The waste would be on fire in a matter of hours, and the radioactivity releases would dwarf what we've seen at Fukushima Daiichi. There's no radiological containment around the pool.
There's neither one around Fukushima pools. Okay, so he's saying that Fukushima pools are still there because Paladin's fuel pool would dwarf Fukushima. Fukushima reactors were 40 years old. They had decades and decades of reactor cores in the pool because you don't have a repository anywhere in Japan, right? So the fuel pools were stuffed. The common spent fuel pool also appears to be gone. And reactor 6 appears to be gone. And this is based upon 736 pictures that were released in January of last year, 2021. That's the remains of Reactor 3. Does that look like a 190-foot building with fuel pools at the top of it? Anybody is? So Kevin Camp told Kevin Blanche that he wasn't anti-nuclear, and they're not.
High-level radioactive.
Like he covered up Fukushima fuel pool by talking about Paladin's nuclear fuel pool troubles. When you put in the word Fukushima beyond nuclear, you get 2 pages. And none of them about Fukushima. So beyond nuclear is the right word. Beyond, it's public relation firm. It's controlled opposition, right? So if you want to have somebody on TV who used controlled opposition, which is beyond nuclear, because they're not going to give up the ghost, and they're going to do what Kevin done, where he pretended that the reactor 4 fuel pools were still there. Pretty disgusting. Japan court just ruled against restarting Hokkaido's nuclear power plant. Just when I thought nothing could cheer me up today, that happened. That was pretty cool. And then green is the way to go. I didn't get to that story. This was Philippines, where they're saying, because Philippines has a nuclear power plant that was finished at the same time as Chernobyl happened. Chernobyl happened in 1986. And so the Philippine government decided not to go with nuclear at that stage. Even though they had completed the plant, they didn't fuel it. So decades later, the crazy still want to fire up that plant. And this is a decrepit building at this stage. It's obsolete technology. And like I say, I was on the Jeff Rince's show earlier. So we were late getting out the gate. And so now it's 1 o'clock in the morning. That's 1:45 in the morning. And our poll got up to 50 votes. Pretty cool. And 100% people said Helen Caldicott should stop pretending she's anti-nuclear. Like when Kevin met her a few times, and Kevin says she was a rude bitch, basically. And not what you would expect from somebody that claims to be anti-nuclear. And that Kevin was discouraged from talking about Fukushima, basically. You've all heard it, I'm sure, right? It's crazy. It's just crazy. I'm ran into the ground trying to get everything done. I'll get there hopefully before the week is out. We'll be in the new place. And hopefully that rescues me, that I can afford. Like, I'm probably going to have to get rid of the long distance on my phone because it's just another bill that is killing me. When you add everything up, like, you know, I've been at this for years, and there's no fun in this, right? It's work, and it's stress, and it don't stop. I don't mind it. I'm just, because it's a good cause and everything. It's just we can't keep that momentum going. And so I got on the Jeff Rince's show tonight in the hopes that we can get some momentum because he has a big audience. And, you know, I've spent a lot of time on their shows. We used to do a lot of Sunday shows with Yoshi Samatsu, which was the former editor of the Japan's Times Sunday edition, English edition. And he had went into the no-go zone in just a couple of years, 6 times on a bicycle. And both Geiger counters died on him. And he lost a lot of his teeth shortly after that, just fell out of his mouth. So he got severely harmed. But he was furious because of the lies and the poisoning of the country, right? And that was his job. He's a forensic investigative journalist at the time, retired. Let's do a shout out for everybody. We'll call it a night. Try to get a few hours because I got to get up and get busy again right away. I'm old and slow is what I discovered. More old too on top of that. That is life, right? Mother time. The only problem is, you know, unless someone's going to replace me, I got to keep going, and I got to always find a way to keep this conversation moving forward. And the industry, I'm sure to most people it seems hopeless, but the beginning of anything is education, documentation, and hopefully research. Research is so important that most people can't wrap their mind around it. And because I'm doing this by myself in a very tiny, if at all, budget, you can't succeed all the time. And you will fail sometime, and we have many times over the years. Just go try again, take a break for a week or two and try to build it up and get back out there. And because the universities are not going to do it, the academic disciplines are not going to go out and do it. We can't say something if we can't quantify it. It's like I don't call people a liar or a scumbag without bringing the supporting documentations for those assertions. And that's only accomplished. You can only do this kind of stuff consistently is when you're committed to something, right? So no matter what, I am committed. And everybody hopefully understands that facet of me and is able to tolerate the side effects of somebody like that, right? Because I'm dedicated to the truth. I'm dedicated to holding accountabilities. I'm dedicated to trying to come up with solutions because you got to be able to identify the problem before you come up with a solution, right? And you got to admit you got a problem before you can come up with a solution. And so I'm struggling in every facet, but I still have that fight in me and that light in me and that energy, and I hope the world will support me because it's difficult and it's lonely trying to do it on your own. Port Angeles, Albert Tinker, James Lucette, Colette. I forgot to give Colette a shout out last night. Peaceware, John Shiflett. See, I remembered your name, John. Finally. How many times did I butcher that, really? Dana Nisana. Hi, Dana. Rambo, was it? So difficult to go backwards on this. Darlene. Good night, everybody. Stephen Young. Hi, Stephen. See Marjorie Vincent there last night. Marge. I forgot to shout out. I didn't even shout out anybody last night, did I? I was too tired. I woke up 7 o'clock this morning with a headache and just shook it off and got busy again. Jack Tripper. Was trying to pump up the Zodiac, the big Zodiac tonight, and broke off the chummies, and I got to go find the right valve to put on that. Yeah. Well, that's I don't know. That'll show up on his site at some point tomorrow, maybe. I don't know, because the link below was to the live as it was happening, right? Unfortunately. Yeah, marijuana, certain facets of it are good for cancer. That's right, Dana Nisana mentioned earlier there. I'm just a little bit of a scattered brain at this hour. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning my time, right? I got to get up in a few hours and pack up. It's just a disaster. And you burn so much fuel doing this, is ridiculous. I'm getting there, though. I'll get it done. It'll probably take a couple of weeks to recover. Summer should be here in another couple of weeks, hopefully. She's miserable out there today and tomorrow and the next day. Heavy rains. I guess not heavy, but a lot of rain, wet days. Adrian Johnson, Kevin Blanche. And I'll come and close the poll in a minute. Let me see here as we say goodnight to everybody. Yeah, we haven't been on a schedule for 6 days or 7 days now. I'm burnt out and I still got quite a ways to go. It's all good. Just got to suck it up for another 4 or 5 days and then I can come to a stop, hopefully. Or not, maybe I can keep going, who knows. Because I still got the tarp on the boat, right? I still got to get that off, I guess, tomorrow. I got to charge up the batteries on it because they've been neglected. Let's call. Yeah, I told Kevin not to scare her investors. That's right, I remember that, James. Just a quick shout out to anybody. Now we're going to close the poll. Thinker, Port Angeles, Nirad, you lost. What's the final tally? 51 votes. 100% said Helen Caldicott should stop pretending she's anti-nuclear. Like, some of these polls are kind of silly. It's meant to just draw your attention to a really, really, really important issue because she has a big following and she's dishonest and disingenuous and deceptive and deceitful, and that's dangerous. It's not acceptable. Same as Ernie Gunnison and what Christopher Busby done is just not acceptable. Or, the mainstream media or the universities, it's just not acceptable. Yeah. Okay, well, let's call it a night. God bless everybody. Hopefully I yelled out everybody. If I missed you, I'm sorry. I'll just have a quick double check. Viltra. Look, I missed that. Vitra. Barks and Meow. So there's 2 people I missed. Goes to show you, right? I thought I had everybody, and it always seems to work that way, don't it? That's all you can do, Dana. Let's call it a night. Yeah, Rambo. That's right. Now I got everybody. Let's call it a night. God bless everybody. Have a great day tomorrow. Hopefully I see everybody tomorrow night. Take care, folks. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you made it this far. Have a great night. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Take care, folks.